As we've been discussing, feelings are what happen when you assign meaning to the bodily sensation or the emotion that you are experiencing. The more accurate your framework around what feelings actually are and what emotion actually means, the more free we will find ourselves when it comes to dealing with our feelings. Welcome back to the Girl Just Feel podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ajane Gaylord, and today I want to talk about something that often frustrates me when it comes to emotional wellness, mental health, emotions, feelings, conversation. And that is the idea that emotions are either good or bad, positive or negative. Now, it's not your fault if you believe that. It's not my fault. This is something that we've kind of been, conditioned or socialized to believe or even to misunderstand. And if you haven't watched the last 2 episodes or even the last 3, where I've been unpacking what emotions actually are, what I've explained is basically emotions are bodily experiences. It's what our body does in response to stimulus, whether it's internal or external, basically just giving us information that something's happening, and then we decide what it means. And that's what a feeling is. The feeling is then what we have determined that bodily experience or that bodily sensation actually means. So if that's the case, then is your heart palpitating good or bad or positive or negative? Is your hands sweating or your heart racing or your butterflies in your stomach or your muscles tightening up? Is that bad? Is that negative? No. So how do we come to understand this? Well, I think it has a lot to do with the history of emotion and even how we've defined emotion. What I came to discover was our basic definition of emotion has changed since the 16th century. And I don't want to go into a full history of emotion, but just the bare bones definition really just has to do with movement. It means to move out. That's what emotions actually mean, or emotion, the word actually means is just to move out. And what we've come to understand is that emotion or emotional expression began to really take on a quote unquote negative connotation because it had to do with disruption. So way back when, the idea that emotion was just a movement of energy, eventually it became to be understood as something that was negative in the sense that it had to do with disruption or disturbance, because an explosive emotional expression would cause disruption or disturbance. And that's how we've kind of adapted this more modern understanding. So if we just look at the bare bones of the basic definition and we understand what emotion actually is, we come to understand that emotions are amoral. They don't have a positive or negative or good or bad connotation. They are just raw physiological data. There is a psychological or emotional connection to that data, but in essence, emotion is, it just is. Emotions just are. The body doing things in response to what's happening is just information. Now, if we were to define negative, because I think if we understand what we're saying, we can understand what we're saying, right? So looking at my little notes here, if I were to look up in the dictionary, and my favorite, well, one of the ones I like to use is the Merriam-Webster, negative means, or the adjective means, to be marked by denial or prohibition, a refusal, absence, withholding or removal of something. It also means a lacking of qualities. And if we look at other definitions or other sources that give us definitions, it also can mean failing to reach an acceptable standard, can be poor, unfavorable, spoiled, morally objectionable, or evil. This is what negative means. And for most of us, that's exactly how we use that term. And if we were to define emotions as what we just said as negative, this is where we end up with the problem. Because is sweat morally objectionable? Your palm sweating? Is your heart palpitating somehow lacking a positive quality? No, it's just information. Now, if we look at how we define good, which is what most of us prefer, we prefer to, I would say, experience our emotional life in a good context. Most of us don't want to experience or deal with what we consider negative. That is why there's such a drive to move quickly past anything that's quote unquote negative. And so, good here means a favorable character quality, a tendency to be bountiful, fertile, handsome, and attractive, of high or desired quality, right? Correct, proper, true, honorable, virtuous, moral, ethical, kind, benevolent. This is all the words that describe what good means. And that's what we prefer. I mean, that's what I would prefer. Who wants to deal with something that's morally objectionable or evil or not desired? Of course, we want what we consider to be good. Now, as we come to understand and reframe the way that we view emotion and our emotional wellness, is to help so that we're not afraid of what we feel and that we can begin to approach whatever feelings we have, whatever the emotion is trying to express to us, without judgment. Because qualifying it as either positive or negative, good or bad, is judgment. That's how we then determine whether or not it's something that's desirable, something that we want, and something, and why we often avoid the very thing that's communicating and going to be helpful to us, which is our emotions and our feelings associated with those emotions. So when we look at what moral means, and that has to do with of or relating to principles of right and wrong in behavior. That's what moral means. So when I say emotions are amoral, meaning they are not what determines the principles of right or wrong behavior. The emotion tells us something's happening, my body is responding to what's happening, and now I have that data and can say, hey, what is this telling me? What is this communicating to me? Instead of judging it as either good or bad. So, a better way for us to understand these feelings of ours is to view them not as good or bad, but as either painful or pleasurable. Feelings are also amoral. They also don't determine the principles of right or wrong behavior. Feelings just exist on a spectrum. And that spectrum, I think, flows from pleasurable to painful, not good or bad, positive or negative. Because to feel anger in and of itself is not quote unquote bad, especially if that anger is in response to injustice, meaning there's a value that's been set, a right that's been set that has not been given. And the response to that right not being given or that injustice is anger. That's an appropriate response to a value that's been violated. But we often demonize anger as bad, as if we should never feel that. We should get rid of that. We should not experience or express that. So if we look at our feelings as a spectrum that swings from pleasurable to painful, I think it'll lessen the judgment and the fear that we have when it comes to dealing with things that feel painful to us, including our feelings. As we've been discussing, feelings are what happen when you assign meaning to the bodily sensation or the emotion that you are experiencing. The more accurate your framework around what feelings actually are and what emotion actually means, the more free we will find ourselves when it comes to dealing with our feelings. My goal today really is for us to start to look at our feelings and even our emotions as not something that we need to stuff down, get rid of, or prefer one type over the other, but to exchange the judgment that we often place on our feelings with the understanding that they either fit into two categories, painful or pleasurable. But the painful feelings, we really don't have to be afraid of. So let's recap. Emotions are bodily sensations in response to some type of stimulus, something that's happening around us, alerting us. And when we assign a meaning to that bodily sensation, that's when we determine the feeling. If we look at our feeling as pleasurable or painful, this feeling is causing me either pleasure or it's causing me pain, then we can determine one of two things: whether a need has been met or whether a need has not been met. When we experience pleasure, it means a need has been met. For example, let's say I'm graduating, I'm going across the stage, and they hand me my degree, and I take my picture and I'm beaming from ear to ear. I'm so excited and happy and joyous because I've accomplished something that I was looking forward to. This need to achieve something has been met, and there's joy and excitement and pleasure and wonderfulness all around it, right? Well, let's look at a painful experience. Let's just say I've lost someone that I care about a lot. They're no longer in my life, and that relationship has come to an end. That ending naturally is going to lead me to feelings of grief and sadness. But that doesn't necessarily mean that something is wrong. It just means that I need connection. There's something that I'm lacking, that I'm seeking. Maybe I'm aware of it, maybe I'm not. But really, that painful experience is letting me know, hey, there's something that I need now. And it's totally okay. There's something that I need now. I think most of us, or at least I know for myself, I've often viewed painful feelings as something that's wrong or bad, going back to that original idea that feelings can be good or bad, positive or negative. But pain doesn't necessarily mean wrong. And that's what I want to help you to understand. Pain doesn't mean wrong. Pain just means there's a need. There is a need. And it's nothing wrong with having a need. The issue is when we don't meet the need and the need goes unmet for so long, and then there's a crisis or a chronic issue or an explosion because the need went unmet for so long, that now I'm doing anything I can to meet the need, and I may even do something that would be detrimental. That's really the issue. The issue isn't the initial need and the emotion and the feeling that comes with the need being exposed. It's when we don't meet the need, we neglect it, and then we end up with an explosion. So let's just use a real life example. If you looked up in the dictionary hangry, you would find my face, because when I don't eat, I get very, very hungry. I get not lightheaded, but I get really, really cranky. Well, let's just use that need as an example. So, in order to stay alive, we must fuel our bodies with food. In order to stay alive, we must drink water to hydrate. Our bodies need sustenance in order to stay alive, in order to run our organs and to move the blood and to give us all of the micro and macronutrients and all of the things. So let's just say I decide, or I'm maybe I didn't decide. Maybe I'm just running through my day and forgot to eat. So what happens is the body responds to the need for me to eat and will send me what's called a hunger pain. I'm sure you've experienced them, right? So the stomach kind of gurgles. There's this call or this pang in the stomach saying, alert, alert, alert. We're missing something. Fill up the belly with something of sustenance. My mouth might even salivate. I might even start to feel a little saliva moving around, kind of calling to, ooh, there's something that needs to come into my food pipe to get to where it needs to get to so that I can be sustained. So let's just say I'm too busy, I'm running through my day, and I forget or I don't or I neglect to consume any food. And so the hunger pain kind of goes out and I recognize it. That's the emotion. That's the body alerting me that, oh, there's something happening. I need to eat. Well, let's say I don't. After a few minutes, the hunger pains are going to stop. They're going to dissipate because I've ignored that call to feed my hunger. So after a little while, the hunger pain is going to stop. It's going to go away. Well, a little while later, it's going to come back because I didn't meet the need. And so the hunger pain is going to come back. And when it does, I may be running around busy, have something going on, and really don't have the time to stop. And then it's going to dissipate again. It's going to come, it's going to go. And so this cycle is going to keep going until I meet the need. Or eventually, my body is going to cry out so much for what it needs. And then I say, okay, now I'm going to feed myself. Am I going to pick the most healthy thing? Am I going to grab broccoli? Is that going to be the most appetizing thing to me? Maybe for you, maybe you're vegan or vegetarian and broccoli is your thing. But for most of us, we're probably going to grab something that's convenient, that's quick, and probably something that's not the healthiest because I've waited too long to feed myself. Now I'm just trying to grab at the quickest, fastest thing I can get in. And I'm probably not going to make a healthy choice. We do the same things with our emotional health. We have a need, our body tells us, our emotions, our feelings tell us, and we ignore it, or we're too busy, or we have too much going on. And so we feel the pain. We know it's there, but then we ignore, we push it down, we try to move past it. And then we keep going. And then after a while, the need has to be met. I have to stay alive. So at some point, I'm going to have to eat something. At some point, you're going to have to deal with the need that you haven't met emotionally. And most of the time, the issue is not with the need itself. It's the way that we end up meeting it. It's probably not going to be healthy. It's probably going to be the quickest, fastest thing we can grab at or get to. And it's probably going to be more detrimental than beneficial. And this is why for so long we've believed positive and negative, good and bad about feelings and emotions, because it really isn't the raw data, or it really isn't the feeling itself. It's what we end up doing in response. If we can begin to view painful feelings as alerting us to something that we need, then really the response to that is to determine what is the need that I need to meet. To be curious about what's actually happening instead of being judgmental about why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling upset? Why am I feeling angry? Why am I feeling mad? Or what happened that made me become upset? What happened that made me become frustrated? Oh, a boundary of mine was violated. Let's say I have a relationship and I trusted somebody with some information. I find out that they violated that trust and told my business. My response to that was to become upset, to become angry, to be very frustrated and even hurt by what they did because I trusted them. Is that a negative thing for me to do? Is that a bad thing for me to feel angry? Absolutely not. To be angry is the appropriate reaction to a boundary and a value that's been violated. Instead of me saying, I shouldn't feel angry, really what I should ask myself is, what is this anger trying to communicate? What do I actually need? In this case, with this trusted friend who violated my trust and betrayed me, I need to set a boundary in this relationship. I need to be vindicated or justified in the fact that they did something that really hurt, and I need to address the hurt. Really, what I'm saying is when we feel painful feelings, it's really a call for us to deal with what has been missing, what is being violated, what is the need that we have. Because if we deal with it, if we address the need, then we can move to the pleasurable feelings, because pleasure happens when needs are met. We feel the pleasurable feelings when the needs are met. That's really what we're talking about. That's really the spectrum here. It isn't good or bad, positive and negative. It isn't the judging of these things. And that's how we can begin to address things that are painful, things that are difficult, the things that are challenging for us without becoming afraid of those feelings. Because really, at the core, it's just a need that has to be met. It's just a call. Just like our hunger pangs let us know that we need to eat. Our painful feelings also communicate that there is something that we need. We've been trained, socialized, raised, fill in the blank, to believe that emotions, the bodily sensations that we experience, and feelings, the things that we determine those bodily experiences mean, are either good or bad. And so we've avoided addressing things that we deem bad, or we try not to feel, quote unquote, these negative feelings. We only want to focus and put emphasis on the quote unquote positive, good feelings. The goal isn't to only feel pleasure all of the time. The goal is to become someone who can be present right in what you're feeling, whether pleasurable or painful, without being destroyed and without demonizing and judging where you are. Being hungry is not bad. It just is. It's a call to meet the need for survival, and it's okay. What is bad, quote unquote, is when we ignore that call and we don't meet the need, because it often leads us to maladaptive behavior. If we can start to view our feelings as pleasurable or painful, and that neither is preferred over the other, because we know what to do, we know how to view, we no longer judge, we no longer condemn, that frees us. I hope that that will free us to be able to move in and out on the full spectrum of our feelings and have a more balanced and a more integrated life. So, when we look at our Christ, when we look at Jesus, he experienced the full spectrum of feelings, from joy, from weeping at his friend's death, even though he had the power to raise him, Jesus still wept, from anger when the Father's house was violated. Jesus modeled for us what it looks like in a healthy way to move from pleasurable to painful, back to pleasurable, back to painful feelings, and maintain sinlessness. Jesus felt all the feels, yet without sin. Feelings are not sinful. They're not good or bad. They don't have any morality attached to them. Now, next time we'll talk about behavior. But today, I want you to walk away understanding that the full spectrum of feelings, ranging from pleasurable to painful, are a gift that God has given us in order to relate to Him, in order to connect to one another, in order to experience the fullness of being a human being and living this life. And we should treasure every aspect of how we feel without fear and judgment. And let me help you by giving you this particular scripture passage. So Hebrews 4 verses 14 through 16. And yes, there are spiritual principles in this passage, but I want you to view this also through the lens of our emotional and through the lens of our emotional lives. Since then, we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession. Here we go. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every aspect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. When we have an emotional need, when we have a need in our feelings, when we have a mental health need, let's not judge it. Let's not despise it. Let's not ignore it or pretend it away. Let's understand that we can come to the throne of grace and we can get help for our need. When we are feeling grief and sadness and anger and frustration, it just means there's a need that we have. And the response to that is to meet the need, not to ignore it, despise it, and judge it. So I hope that helps. I hope that brings you some insight. Your life work for this week is just to write down the list of feelings that you know, whatever they are. If it's excitement, happiness, frustration, anger, whatever the words are that you know, just write down all the feelings, words you can think of. That's your life for this week. I hope this has been a blessing to you. I'll see you next time.